Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. Let's get to what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. Go and check out secretsocietyofsupplychain.com. We've got some great conversations happening over there. Listen and tune into the show because it's a lot of fun. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, founder and host and CEO of Let's Talk Supply Chain, blended podcast and blended pledge. We've got a couple more to share with you. Let's dive in. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I am the founder and CEO of Let's Talk Supply Chain, as well as the Blended Pledge, the Blended Podcast. And I'm super excited to be here with you today because we've got Josh from ShipStation who's going to join us. And of course, we've also got our cast of characters that are joining us as well, Camille, Diane, and Julian too. And we've got a lot to talk about. Now, I want to give a shout out to our show sponsor, which is the Secret Society of Supply Chain. If you have not gone to check that out yet, head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com. It's our free membership group. Now, I want to give a shout out to all our newest members. We've got Mohammed, Sharon, Abdullah, Glenn, John Fitzgerald, Mackenzie, Chris, Robin, Lindsay, Jory, Will, Waleed, Mark, Martha, Rajender, Amen, Rashmeet, Laurent, John, Gary, Kimberly, Carlos, Davin, Adriana, Steve, Monik, Wesley, Ann, and Will Sparks. Holy moly, we've got a lot of new members in the Secret Society of Supply Chain. So welcome to everybody. If you want to get a shout out, head over there and join our group today. Now, remember, I want to know where you're tuning in from. So put those in the comments and we will put those up on the screen. And of course, if you are loving our conversation today, make sure that you put a fire emoji in those comments as well, because we want to share that too. And then, of course, we've got the QR code in the top right-hand corner, and that's going to give you some more information about who we are talking to today, which is ShipStation. Now, that's going to give you some more information about them. All right, let's get into what is happening with Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a brand new episode. Now, this is with IFS Softion, my buddy over there, Mark Frolick. Now, we were talking about embracing a limitless future with Softion. Highly recommend you go and check that out. We recorded this episode on site at Modex. It was our first time over at Modex, and it was really great. He's got a lot of great insights and knowledge. So go check that out. Plus, if you can see there on the screen, that's our new AI interactive podcast experience. So you can go to our homepage, letstalksupplychain.com, grab any one of our episodes, and you can start interacting with it. Executive summary, key points with timestamps, industry trends, related content. Plus, you can ask the episode a question. So I highly recommend you go and check that out. All right, what else is happening? Now, where are we going to be? Next week, we are going to be at Home Delivery World. I'm going to be on stage Wednesday morning, moderating a keynote in the morning with Mattress Firm, and can't wait to do that. Plus, we're going to be recording podcasts on site with a couple of our clients, and we can't wait to do that. And we have a Secret Society of Supply Chain dinner on the Tuesday night as well. And what else do we have going on? We've got, now I don't know if you remember this announcement just a little while ago. We still have some announcements to go, but we are launching Let's Talk Supply Chain Europe in September. Now we've got Hazel, who's going to be our new host for Let's Talk Supply Chain Europe, and I can't wait for you to meet her. But head over to Let's Talk Supply Chain Europe's LinkedIn page and follow us, because we are sharing upcoming news within that region, specifically based around supply chain in that region. So go and check that out. We're going to have brand new episodes for you in September. And then in June, we are launching Let's Talk Supply Chain Asia. Now, you may have seen this already online. We've got Faujan, who is our new host in Asia, and he's going to be covering Asia, the Middle East, and so much more. He's going to have Dr. Mudasir on the show, Iman, if you've seen her in our community as well, he's going to be interviewing her. There's a lot going on in the region. There's talent shortages, plus a lot of us want to know, like, what are the updates, what's moving, what's not moving, etc. We're going to have all of that for you on that particular show. So head over to the Let's Talk Supply Chain Asia page and follow us, because we want to showcase what's happening in that region for you. All right, well, now it's time to turn it over to Camille, because she's got to introduce our guest for today.
Every package looks simple at the doorstep. The real story is everything that had to connect before it arrived. Josh Steinitz has spent his career building those connections across commerce, logistics, partnerships, and technology. Today, he works at the strategy layer of shipping software, where partnerships, carriers, and commerce infrastructure meet. His focus is not just moving things faster, it is building the infrastructure that connects the entire system. Before that, Josh led corporate business development for Amazon's worldwide operations. His team worked across electric vehicles, autonomous technology, air cargo, sustainability, strategic investments, and commercial partnerships. Before that, he built as an entrepreneur, founded and sold an online travel company, and helped scale revenue. Please welcome Josh to Thoughts and Coffee.
Hi, Josh. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today? You're on mute, so I just want to make sure we take that off before you start speaking. There we go.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, doing great. Early here on the West Coast, but I'll dial it in.
We appreciate you taking the time. Now, I hope you have some coffee there. I mean, I know I do with my, Harry Potter mug.
Yeah, exactly.
I won't ask you what's in there, because it's like 6:45 in the morning for you, or actually just a little bit past 7. So we appreciate you for joining us today. Now, we've got so much to talk about. We've got some really great articles that we're going to share in the comments with everybody. But first, I want to get to the poll of the week. So we ask everybody a question every single Wednesday morning. Now, this question came from ShipStation because you wanted to learn a little bit more about how the industry is thinking about this, right? When a delivery issue occurs, how does your team typically find out? Now, we had 38% said customer tells us first, 35% said manual tracking reports, 21% automated alerts in place. Josh, what do you think about this? Because honestly, between the 38% and the 35%, I'm a little scared.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of tells me that there's a lot of headroom to improve, right? I think in an age where shipping and customer expectations are ever increasing, and shipping can be a competitive advantage or disadvantage, this is somewhat concerning. But the good news is there's lots of headroom to improve, and obviously we'll talk about a little bit later some ways that merchants and sellers can think about doing that. But certainly being proactive is much better than being reactive. And so we'd like to see all of our customers have those kind of proactive tools in place.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit worried about the customer tells us first. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later on the show, because you actually came out with a blog that talks about this, but that like delivery is branding loyalty and trust. And if the customer is telling us first, that's a really big problem. We had Steve Singer actually write a comment for this particular poll, and he said in food distribution, customer tells us first is still far more common than most operations leaders would like to admit, and it is the most expensive way to learn. Isn't that so true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, by the time the customer is motivated to reach out and tell you, you've already burned some trust. Now, you can obviously kind of kick save that and try to re-engage with that customer and take that opportunity to, turn a frown into a smile, if you will. But typically, that's already a problem. And so, again, that's where we'd like to use technology. We'd like to use diversity across the supply chain with different carriers, different connections to kind of limit those problems before they happen. And if they do, proactively kind of reroute things. As opposed to, again, sit around and wait for a problem, deal with kind of an expensive and potentially customer trust burning, experience.
Yeah, well, and that goes hand in hand with actually that second option that said the manual reporting and the tracking. If we're manually reporting and the tracking, no wonder customers are telling us first. I don't even know how everybody's doing that right now, especially manually. I mean, it just takes forever. You wouldn't really be able to, there's not really a destination. It would be a consistent, continuous improvement journey.
Yeah, it's quite honestly for a lot of small and medium businesses, it's a lot of overhead, right?
Yeah.
And resources to manually do that. And it's one thing if you have an army of people at a large retailer or logistics business, but for a small and medium business, that's a big burden. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the advantages of trying to use AI and automated tools to make your life easier, make your customers happier.
Absolutely. Now is the time of the show that I ask our guests to give us a bit of a market update. Like in your world, what are you talking to customers about? What are the biggest questions that they have? Or maybe for our audience, what do we need to be thinking about right now? And I think this part is really, really important because obviously supply chain covers so many different facets of, a shipment's life cycle. And
Mhm.
today we're really focusing on last mile delivery and what that means for your retailers, what that means for brands. So talk to me about that market update. What are people really thinking about right now?
Yeah, I'll call out two or three things that are top of mind. One is, of course, AI is on the tip of everyone's tongue. And I think a lot of our customers are wondering where does kind of AI pixie dust and the halo of all the buzzwords and real value begin?
Yeah.
And what is just a bunch of hype and what's actually going to make my life easier, my costs lower, my customers happier. So that's a big point of discussion when we talk to customers and prospects and others. Secondly, of course, we'll talk about this in a little bit, the impact of Amazon, coming into the supply chain in a more explicit way and opening that capability of services up to third parties. And third, the current events, which we'll also talk about. Again, for ShipStation's customers who tend to be small and medium merchants, not mega retailers or mega brands, it's extra stress to manage the risk and disruption. They don't often have the balance sheet to be able to subsidize logistics costs for months on end while global events, happen
Mhm.
and may stress those balance sheets. So I think those are three things that are top of mind for our customers as I think about kind of what customer problems are we trying to solve, what's top of mind for them. And we want to be their trusted advisor and source of truth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to give a shout out over to Michael Nooner over on my personal LinkedIn. We've also got Heather tuning in as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Michael says something about chaos is a terrible thing to waste if you're positioned right. So highly recommend you go and check that out. All right, let's get to our first article. Now, I want to talk about this. Now, you might take a look at this article and think, okay, this is from November 2025, but I think it's still extremely relevant to today. Part of this is the end of the de minimis exemption. And if you know what a de minimis exemption is, into Canada, it was like less than 40 bucks. Into the US, it was less than $800. And so there was a big gap. And so something needed to be adjusted on the de minimis side for sure. But we've completely eliminated that in November. And I don't think it got the news time it deserved, right, Josh? Because it really is affecting so much within the industry. 81% of shipments actually fell once the de minimis exemption ended. I mean, you've got to think about it. There's so many packages that are moving across the border that are under $800, and people were using that to an advantage to be able to help them move products across the border. So, what does this look like right now, Josh, and how is it affecting customers and retailers?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It kind of didn't get the appropriate coverage it deserved. I think part of that was because it was lost in the shuffle amidst all the thrash around tariffs. And it's related to that, but it's not the same as that.
Right.
And so I think there was so much coverage in the back and forth on tariffs. One of the things we saw between the tariffs and the de minimis discussion on off was initially a kind of a big spike or growth in imports into the US. as a lot of sellers were front running, the expected impact of the tariffs and the change in the exemption. And then once the exemption actually hit last fall, as this article indicates, we also at ShipStation saw a significant decrease in inbound shipments for that reason. So what are merchants and sellers doing about it? And even marketplaces, like some of the Chinese marketplaces that really were taking advantage of this loophole, if you will, shipping very low cost T-shirts from a factory in China direct to consumer kind of thing. You started to see a lot of these marketplaces start to forward deploy inventory into the U.S. And that's because when you're shipping it in a container in bulk, the unit cost per fee and duty is still lower than it would be if you're shipping it one by one in a small parcel. And so you're starting to see these marketplaces build out logistics infrastructure, warehousing, and delivery in the U.S. or in Canada in some cases, and then relying on a network of providers to support that, as opposed to, again, just simply shipping it to the post office. So that's been one impact, but it causes delays. It increases costs, so consumers will notice that. And I think the article also rightly points out that there are some reasons that you could argue that exemption should end or should change. There was exploitation of that loophole. There's illicit drugs and other things coming across. But I think let's be honest, the real reason that change was made was to make the tariffs bite a little bit more. So it's definitely impacted, again, small to medium businesses tend to bear these impacts more than the larger players who have more robust balance sheets, more diverse supply chains, more inventory storage in country. So that's been a challenge for our customers, most certainly.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to note, and I'm going to mention this, I think, in a little bit with some of the top news stories as well, the USMCA is about to be renegotiated. I mean, this is happening in June. And so what's happened with the de minimis as well is I think it's also going to be part of that negotiation in the fact that it needs to be a little bit more level set between the countries that are part of USMCA. So keep an eye on it because this is coming. There's a lot of trade coming from Mexico into the US now. And I think that has to do with a lot more nearshoring with how customers and retailers and companies are thinking about restructuring their supply chains. And so this is going to be a big one. This is going to be, I think it's going to be a long negotiation. I think there's going to be several things on the table that obviously each party is going to want. And so I would watch this very, very, very closely. So I appreciate you for sharing all that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. And I would add to that, to your point, there's a way to do this right.
Yeah.
That's not political, which is to try to, confront unfair practices, but also not raise the friction and overhead associated with commerce, consumer impact, and honestly, government resources for CBP and other, right? That there's a way to do this right, where it's like, hey, if I'm ordering a legitimate good that's quite low value from Mexico or from Canada, let's not try to make the perfect the enemy of the good and upend, the flow of commerce. On the other hand, if you have huge marketplaces exploiting low-cost labor in China and taking advantage of postal to postal low-cost shipping connections, and or of course sending drugs or other things across the border, that's different. So I think, you can believe it. We need to crack down on one without impeding the other.
Yeah, so true. All right, we've got another article coming up, but first I want to send it over to Diane and Julian at the news desk to give us some of the top news stories for this week.
Thanks, Sarah. The theme from this week's stories is leverage.
Amazon wants network density, rail is chasing truck freight, and fuel markets are tightening the room. First up, Amazon is taking supply chain services beyond Amazon sellers.
Freight, distribution, fulfillment, and parcel shipping are now being offered more broadly.
The market noticed the Dow Jones Transportation Average fell 4.82% after the announcement.
FedEx, UPS, Forward Air, and GXO all felt that pressure.
But logistics is not retail. Analysts called this market massive, fragmented, and hard to dominate.
The immediate play is density, not world conquest.
The real question is trust. Some retailers won't want Amazon inside their transportation data.
That keeps room open for custom logistics providers.
Next, CPKC and CSX improved their Southeast Mexico rail service.
This connects Mexico, Texas, and the U.S. Southeast. The upgraded SMX line cuts transit times by about 20% to 45%.
That is the number shippers will notice. Atlanta to Dallas gets 1 day faster. Atlanta to Central Mexico gets about 2.5 days faster.
Those are real planning gains.
The expanded service also adds Charlotte, Jacksonville, and Central Florida.
So the value is faster transit and more usable origin points.
Schneider says one train can replace up to 300 semis.
That is why this matters when fuel and capacity tighten. Finally, fuel. U.S. oil product exports hit a record 8.2 million barrels a day.
Diesel is the signal to watch. Distillates, including diesel, reached 1.9 million barrels a day in the week ended May 1.
Jet fuel reached 427,000 barrels a day.
The pinch is at home. U.S. diesel averaged about $5.67 a gallon.
Distillate stocks were at their lowest level since 2005.
That means shippers are watching 3 pressure points at once.
Who controls the network, which lanes move faster, and how fuel resets the plan.
Back to you, Sarah.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Diane and Julian. I love the fact that we get to understand a little bit more about what's happening in the market, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you came from Amazon, and this is a pretty big announcement because they're getting into 3PLs, right? But GXO was part of that article that said, wait a second, there's enough room for everybody. There's a lot of opportunity. So what did you think about what they were talking about?
Yeah, I think the announcement is it's really important to think about that with a long-term perspective. The immediate change is not so great. Amazon has been working towards and incrementally building this capacity for quite some time now. And you've seen them start to carry an ever greater percentage of their own volume as they bring it away from other providers like UPS or FedEx or others, Postal Service. And as they've been insourcing that capacity and developing their own services, it's only natural that they would want to extend not just spare capacity, but start to externalize those services to third parties. So I think it's important to keep the eye on the long-term ball there. I think what's new, about this announcement is a few things. One is part of it's just sort of a go-to-market bundling of a variety of distinct or previously siloed services like freight, last mile shipping, warehousing and storage, inbound freight forwarding. That's now kind of brought to market as a more holistic, singular offering, even though, let's be honest, most customers don't just call up Amazon and say, hey, I'd like to buy supply chain.
Right.
All I want to do is make my widgets and then give it to you and you figure out everything else. That's not typically how customers buy, but knowing that they have all those discrete components, they kind of have a menu of options. The other piece that I think is newer is an explicit recognition that they are getting into this not just for Amazon sellers, third-party sellers, but for anyone really. And as the article notes, that's going to be most appropriate for businesses and merchants whose stuff sort of looks like the kind of things you buy on Amazon. It's not going to be heavy industrial goods or not going to be delivering rebar to construction sites, but they might be delivering B2B items, not just B2C items like contact lenses to stores or small auto parts to dealers or pharmacy, or a lot of these higher value, B2B items, in addition to, of course, their core competency, which is, B2C e-commerce.
Yeah. It's so true. And I go back to also the other article that they were talking about in relation to trade from Mexico. Again, USMCA is going to be the one to watch. All right, let's get to our second article. So this is a blog from ShipStation's website. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to showcase this particular one is because it talks about the growth in e-commerce, but it talks about it differently. It says that the growth in e-commerce needs to be earned. Now, I also want to link this back to the first article that we talked about around de minimis, because one of the challenges that the retailers that you spoke to about this is talking about 28% of their costs in operations and fulfillment are going up. And I have a feeling that part of this has to do with that de minimis that we were talking about earlier. But talk to me about this article. Why is this so important? Why do people need to go and read this?
Yeah, I think, look, this kind of goes back to one of my comments earlier about what is the true business value of AI and big data as opposed to just, whizzy features. And it's getting out in front of problems. It's making smarter, more strategic inventory placement decisions. It's de-risking your supply chain. It's managing the diversity of your carrier mix, lane by lane, carrier by carrier, and doing that in a much more intelligent, hands off the wheel way, where you kind of set your goals, not even your business rules. It's not a rules-based system per se, but actually, a goal and a strategy-based system where the technology can ultimately drive that value. And then the second point I would make is that thinking about ShipStation customers, who again are not always the Walmarts and Amazons of the world, but really the hundreds of thousands of small and medium businesses across, North America and Europe. We want to democratize the types of technologies that previously only the big retailers and shippers had access to.
Yes.
Amazon's been doing this for a long time, but a lot of smaller businesses don't have access to that tech. And we want to provide that and kind of level the playing field again, because, those issues, Amazon, for example, has the Prime benefit program, right? With fast and easy 1-2 day shipping, easy free returns. That's a huge competitive advantage, right? And so we'd like to kind of reinforce the value of those trust points, if you will, for the end consumer, for our customers, the merchant, such that they can drive better conversions and differentiate themselves. Where the price may be very similar for an item, the shopping and checkout experience may be very similar. You can store your credit card, you can create an account. These things are kind of table stakes now. But if you have fundamentally differentiated shipping options, that can be a core competitive advantage.
Yeah, and everybody wants options. That's what they're looking at. And I want to go back to the poll, because the one at 38% that said that the customer still lets us know if there's a problem with shipping. And this article actually addresses that point and talks about how you manage it before the customer even knows that there's a challenge with their shipment, that there's a problem. And that is going to be the competitive advantage, the strategic advantage moving forward. Because as you so rightly put in this particular article, delivery is branding, loyalty, and trust. That's where you establish all three of those things within an interaction with a customer that helps drive them come back and bring revenue back in your pocket.
That's right. And again, especially if you're a small or medium company who doesn't have the brand equity of a massive global business, that is how you earn that trust. I'm like anyone, I'm skeptical when I go to a new website. They don't know anything about me. They don't have my information, so there's higher friction to check out in the first place. But I also don't know if they're going to execute well. What's the return policy? Am I going to have to repackage the thing and go to the post office? Or we've been schooled in convenience. And so, if I'm buying on a D2C website, that experience is key. And if it's a great experience, I'm likely to go back and do it again.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if we track this, and I don't know if we do. I think a key data point might be whether they check out with PayPal or not. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm not entirely sure about the retailer, I'll check out through PayPal, because I believe it's insured, and if something goes wrong, they'll give a refund and do all of that kind of stuff. So I think that would be an interesting data point for retailers. But yeah, highly recommend you go and check out that link. It is in the comments. Now, we've only got about a minute and a half left, and I want to do this last article real quick, because this one actually talks about the impact on e-commerce brands in 2026. And what they talk about is what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. And they say the biggest threats to e-commerce are the oil, the Strait of Hormuz, what's happening there, container rates going up because of it. Rerouting is taking 10 to 14 days for any product that you're buying overseas. That's a really long time. What did you think about this article real quick, Josh? And what are some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, this is, of course, obvious to most of us, whether you're looking at the gas pump or the products you buy every day. And I would just bring it back to our customers who, again, are small to medium businesses typically, who are bearing sort of extra brunt of those types of impacts. And it does create an even further forcing function to think strategically about perhaps storing more inventory locally, having more days of cover selection available, working backwards to create alternative routes in your supply chain, such that you're able to maintain your in-stock on your stores and on your marketplaces. And again, managing your carrier mix very thoughtfully with technology, ideally, such that your business is not overexposed to these risks. Fuel surcharges are a big thing. Our customers are getting hit with it, and it's going to flow all the way through, the market and impact you and I and everyone else.
Yeah. Some of the things that stood out for me as far as the solution, safety stock, pre-positioned inventory is really going to be that competitive advantage moving forward. Well, listen, I want to give a big shout out on my personal LinkedIn to everybody who tuned in. We had a couple of fire emojis. Afifi joined us as well. Plus, we had some great conversations over on Instagram as well. So thank you all for joining us today. Next week, DC is going to be hosting the show with our friends over at the Breckham Group. And we've got a huge announcement that you're not going to want to miss. So you're going to want to tune in for that. Josh at ShipStation, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing such great insights.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right. We'll see everybody later. Have a good week, everyone. Bye-bye.